This section on Class B single-engine performance will deal with the JAA regulations for all phases of flight for that class of aeroplane. The regulations are all found in JAR Ops 1, which we discussed briefly in the lesson on performance standards. However, most of these regulations can also be found within the CAP 698, which is issued to candidates in the ATPL theoretical examinations and should normally be issued to student pilots by their ground training organization. If you do not have a copy of the CAP 698, the document may be downloaded from the CAA website. In this first lesson, we will discuss the regulations which are associated with the takeoff phase of flight. However, first of all, there are some general considerations we need to discuss about the operation of Class B single-engine aeroplanes for commercial air transport purposes. These considerations can be found in CAP 698 at the beginning of Section 2 on page 1. There are 4 general requirements about operating Class B single-engine aeroplanes for commercial air transport purposes. The first is that this aeroplane shall not be operated at night. The second, that the aeroplane must not be operated in instrument meteorological conditions, except under special visual flight rules. The third is that this aeroplane must not be operated unless suitable surfaces are available en route, which permit a safe forced landing to be made should the engine failure occur at any point on the route. And lastly, that this type of aeroplane must not be operated above a cloud layer that extends below the relevant minimum safe altitude. The reason why this latter regulation exists is quite easy to understand. If the engine were to fail during these conditions, it would be almost impossible for a pilot to be able to see the landing surface, and therefore impossible for the pilot to carry out a safe forced landing. Further down on page 1 of Section 2, there are some more regulations, but these are specific to the takeoff phase of flight. There is only one principal regulation that must be complied with, and this regulation relates to the minimum field lengths that must be available for takeoff. The takeoff requirements state that if no clearway or stopway is available at the airfield, the takeoff distance multiplied by 1.25 must not exceed the length of takeoff run available. This is best understood by looking at an example. Let us assume that the airplane flight manual gives the takeoff distance as 3,000 feet. Multiplying this value by 1.25 gives us a value of 3,750 feet. Essentially, this means that the runway must be at least 3,750 feet long, or, more correctly, the takeoff run available must be at least 3,750 feet long. This rule ensures that once the aeroplane has completed the takeoff, that is, when it's at the screen height, there should be a certain amount of the runway remaining. Therefore, the regulation requirement provides a safety margin for the takeoff. We discussed these safety concerns during the lesson on performance standards. To interpret the regulation, although the actual takeoff distance is 3,000 feet, the authorities are suggesting that the worst case in a million would be a takeoff that is 3,750 feet long. This helps us again to see the difference between net and gross performance. Here the gross performance for takeoff is 3,000 feet, but the net performance, which is always worst performance, is 3,750 feet. If there are stopways and/or clearways, then the regulation requirements are a little more complicated. At airfields with stopways and/or clearways, there are 3 regulatory concerns about the takeoff distance. Firstly, when a stopway and/or clearway is available, takeoff distance must not exceed the takeoff run available. Secondly, the takeoff distance, when multiplied by 1.3, must not exceed the accelerate stop distance available. Thirdly, the takeoff distance, when multiplied by 1.15, must not exceed the takeoff distance available. Since these regulations may be a little complicated to understand, let's work through an example to illustrate their meaning. We will assume a takeoff distance of 3,000 feet. The first regulation tells us that the takeoff distance of 3,000 feet must not exceed the takeoff run available. Therefore, the pilot must ensure that the runway, or more correctly the takeoff run available, is at least 3,000 feet long. The second regulation tells us that when the takeoff distance is multiplied by 1.3, that distance must not exceed the accelerate stop distance available. If you remember, the accelerate stop distance available is the takeoff run available plus any stopway. So, a pilot must ensure that the airfield has an accelerate stop distance available more than 3,900 feet long. The last regulation tells us that the takeoff distance, when multiplied by 1.15, must not be greater than the takeoff distance available. You may recall that the takeoff distance available is the takeoff run available plus any clearway. Therefore, the pilot must ensure that he has at least 3,450 feet of takeoff distance available. If any of these regulations cannot be complied with, a pilot must reduce his takeoff distance. The most practical method of doing so is to take off with less weight, or perhaps use a higher flap setting, or wait till the air density has increased. Having discussed the regulations detailing the maximum takeoff distance that may be permitted at an airfield, this next part of the lesson will detail the regulations governing how the takeoff distance is actually calculated. These regulations stipulate what correction factors must be applied to the takeoff distance when the runway conditions are different from standard. At the top of page 2 of section 2, under point C in cap 698, it states that if the runway is other than dry and paved, the following correction factors must be used when determining the takeoff distance. These correction factors are shown on screen. As you have learnt already, grass runways will increase the takeoff distance compared to paved runways. Here, the factor to use to account for the effect of dry grass is 1.2, and 1.3 if the grass is wet. Underneath the table, point D details the corrections to be applied if there is a slope to the runway. It states that a pilot must increase the takeoff distance by 5%, or by a factor of 1.05, for every 1% upslope. However, it also states that no factorization is permitted for downslope. In other words, when an aeroplane may be taking off on a downward sloping runway, no correction factor is to be applied for the downslope. The reason for ignoring the downslope is because a downslope will decrease the takeoff distance, and this helps to add a little extra safety to the takeoff distance calculation.